All right, welcome in everyone. We'll wait a few more minutes before we get started here. Thanks for joining us for this session on VR and mental performance. Part 2 of a 2-part clinic that we started last week. Hope everyone is doing well. I see some familiar names and faces, which is great. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. We're really excited to be here. VR and mental performance is a topic that is near and dear to our hearts here at MindSpark Learning. A topic that we've been working on for ever since MSL Capita started back in August of last year. And MSL Capita is committed to pursuing community resilience through sport. And real quickly, in case you can't hear me right now, we'll leave this slide up for just a few minutes so that you can make sure your audio is working just fine. And a couple of pointers real quickly just on Zoom etiquette for this session. If we do go into breakout rooms, just please make sure you turn your camera on just so there's that personal connection with everyone. You're automatically going to be muted. So if you have any technical issues or any questions, you can send a message in the chat room to Mike, who is helping us with support today. And then again, feel free to use that chat room feature to ask questions and add insight. We really appreciate, when we get some feedback and we get some opinions and thoughts from, those who are joining us. So feel free to use that chat room. And again, if you have any technical questions, feel free to ask Mike, who is supporting us today for this session. And again, we're really excited to, kind of host this clinic and session on VR and mental performance. Again, we are always looking towards the future here at MSL Capita, and we know that virtual reality and augmented reality is going to play a major role in how athletes are, developed and how they train on a regular basis moving forward, especially while a lot of traditional sports are on hold due to the COVID pandemic. Again, my name is Justin Goldman. I'm the Director of Athletic Partnerships here at MindSpark Learning. And we're also being joined by Mike Trujillo, who is our Senior Director of IT. And he's also our tech guru for VR. So later on near the end of this session, if you guys have any questions about VR technology, different headsets that you can go out and start using, Mike's really the go-to guy for that, and we'll have him answer any questions that you may have. Real quickly, just so that you have a little bit of a deeper understanding of the MSL Capita program at MindSpark Learning, we're really based around 4 main pillars. And you can see those 4 pillars here, starting with social purpose, where we really do strive to provide professional development for coaches where they can go out and instill that social purpose in the athletes and organizations that they work with. So looking at ways to solve those real world problems that athletes and sport organizations face on a daily basis and really increase that community resilience and resolve by breaking down a lot of the barriers that we face on a daily basis related to equality, inclusion, accessibility, and diversity. Workforce development is another one of the main pillars of our program, where we really bridge athletic development with professional development in order to help athletes and coaches be more prepared for their future profession, whatever that may be, whether it's in sport or outside of sport. And then, of course, the big focus today is on the next gen athlete, upskilling athletes and coaches and sport organizations by using a lot of the latest innovations and methods in sports science, technology, and communications. And right now, VR is one of the hottest and fastest growing industries in sports training and development. And then, of course, the human element, which is a real big key of ours here at MSL Capita, where we emphasize social emotional learning, empathy-based teaching, and really look to disrupt the culture of competitive sports by supporting the human first and the athlete second. So I just wanted to take a minute to share those pillars because that really is the focus, not only for this session today in terms of VR and mental performance, but the whole MSL Capita program. So we're just going to start with a real quick activity to get your brains flowing and to start thinking about all of the different uses that VR can have in sports performance and athletic training. So we're going to take 5 minutes to just do a simple seek and share session. You can see this graphic on the right. It's amazing how many companies out there are invested in VR and VR technology. So what you're going to do is basically just go out and scour the internet and the World Wide Web and just look for some really cool emerging uses for VR technology, whether that be a product, doesn't even necessarily have to be sports related. Anything or any industry or any company that's leaning on VR or augmented reality to produce or create a product, we'd love to see what you come up with. So go ahead and take 5 minutes, scour the web, and please go ahead and share in the chat room links to any products that you really like, or you can just provide a brief description of the products that you find over the next 5 minutes. And we'll see you right back here in a few. All right, everyone, welcome back. Sorry about the buzzer there. So yeah, it was really cool to see a lot of the different links that everyone shared in the chat room. As you can see, VR has got a major influence in not only different industries like the medical industry. I know architecture, that industry really leans on VR. And then obviously where our focus is going to be today is in sports and athletic development. So thank you guys for sharing some of those links in the chat room. Just a reminder, for this session, you will be receiving an online toolkit with all of the different links and videos that you will see in this session. So if you missed something or you saw a video that you really liked, don't worry, afterwards, either later today or tomorrow, you will get a link to the recording of this session, as well as all the different links to all the videos that we're sharing. So we broke down this 2-hour session into 3 main parts in order to accomplish the objectives that we have in terms of teaching you about a lot of the different uses for VR and mental performance in the sports industry. And part 1 is really going to look at how athletes are using VR right now today to simulate training and to develop various athletic skills. Part 2 is really going to dig into mental performance and mental health and how VR is being used to improve both categories for athletes of all ages and all levels. And then part 3 is really going to look at the rise of VR and how workforce development can be utilized to, bring athletes and the next generation of professionals opportunities in the workforce. So again, we saw how many industries are involved in virtual reality, how many companies there are. It's a tremendous opportunity for athletes and our youth to get involved in a profession that will create an amazing career for them in the future. So part 1, really looking at today's athletes and how VR is having a positive impact on their training. We're going to start with this awesome video from QB Sim, looking at how football quarterbacks are using VR right now.
The mission of Sports VTS is really to change the paradigm in athletic training by creating a virtual environment in safe and dynamic conditions. This gives the athlete an opportunity to go through situations and scenarios at game speed without the risk of injury.
Is that actually the ball right there?
How can we help the younger players continue to develop? And what can I do to help my team when I'm in a situation where my starter goes down? And the only way to really make it a dynamic experience is you have to throw a football.
The ability to use technology like this to train quarterbacks, the value truly is the reps.
Giving people that potential to really develop their skill set without having to organize a group of receivers and go out onto a field and have a practice. They can do this 15, in a facility.
15, set.
Oh.
You got hit.
Did you get hit?
Thank God I got rid of that ball.
It's a realistic sense of a defense coming down on you. You've got to get rid of the football quickly. And as we've trained in it here internally, we've found that our improvement to drop back, find receivers, and get rid of the football has really increased.
You're reducing, obviously, the potential for injury because you're not out on a field. You're not having to worry about guys running into your quarterback. You're not having to worry about elements of practice that are uncontrollable, frankly.
And you're getting what I tell kids, the boring stuff that you have to do to be a good quarterback, which is constantly take drop after drop after drop after drop and throw until you can't throw anymore. This will allow you that opportunity to get those real live action reps without getting hit and having to land on your back and possibly get injured.
And my reactions are like real. Like I felt like I was gonna get hit. And I'm trying to protect myself, trying to avoid, trying to step over people. It does put you into that real life feel.
Hit me again.
The sports VTS team is very dynamic. You have incredible tech talent involved with this. You have the vision, the drive of Ted. You've got the business acumen of Matt. And you got athletes who come in and not only get excited by it, but see the potential for it to impact the game that we love so much in a positive way.
White 90 set.
That was awesome. Good job. Good job.
Okay, so really cool video to just kind of show you at the highest level, professional football quarterbacks, how they're already using VR technology to train and develop their skills. And yeah, maybe this isn't the most accessible technology for, let's say, youth athletes or grassroots programs, but you are starting to see this technology become more accessible and more affordable as time goes on. There's so much competition in the industry that there are a number of companies that are creating VR technology that is, affordable, something that you can go out and buy at Best Buy or on Amazon and start using in youth programs right now. And as we continue this discussion, you'll see a lot of those technologies and you'll be sparked to kind of come up with ideas of ways that you can use VR in your school or in your organization, no matter what level you're at. To really highlight some of these training benefits that VR provides for athletes, it really starts with that immersive learning and training environment. You could see it firsthand with the football quarterbacks. You saw them deke and try and get out of the way when they saw an oncoming pass rusher. You saw the movements that they were making, and you heard some of their comments talk about how it was just like real life. And you heard the term increased reps and how important it is to get those reps without having to face possible injury. I think for a football quarterback, you're one of the most important athletes on the field. And to have that ability to still do some cognitive training without the worry of getting hit by a 300-pound lineman, there's a lot of value in that. And that's really some of the main benefits that you see that VR can provide any athlete, not just a football quarterback. The eye tracking technology that's included with, a headset like the Oculus Quest and the Oculus Go can improve sports vision. We talked about the increased reps and how that can help improve muscle memory without having to be on the field all day long. It's also being used, VR is also being used for self-visualization and mindfulness, which is really the meat of part 2 of this session. And then it can also improve neuropriming, which is really just getting your mind into that state where you can get into the flow state a little bit easier and be ready to perform at a high level quicker and easier and more effectively. And then we'll also talk a little bit about how VR can assist in scouting and evaluating talent and really help the coaching process as well. So here's another video just to, again, show some of the uses that are happening right now. Ribby VR is being used by youth baseball players in a lot of different areas across the country. So here's another great video showing current uses of VR tech.
Elite hitters aren't born, they're developed. Ribby VR accelerates development by maximizing game speed reps, providing a week's worth of at-bats in minutes. Using virtual reality technology, improve your performance through self-led training modules or with a live hitting coach. Focus on strengthening pitch identification, strike zone awareness, plate discipline, and situational hitting. And the best part? There are no restrictions with Ribby VR. Step into the batter's box anytime and anywhere to face live pitching at all levels. Ribby VR. Virtual reality. Real results.
Okay, so really cool. And I think it's really fun to look at how VR can be used across the whole spectrum of different sports. So we already saw football, a use there. And now for baseball, I think a lot of it comes down to just reading the game. And that's where VR can really give an advantage to an athlete. We talked about how it can enhance sports vision through different training programs and tasks. You can see how VR can enhance an athlete's ability to process the game's smallest patterns of movement. So for a hitter in baseball, it's actually being able to see the seams on the ball as it's traveling towards you at, upwards to 100 miles an hour. And the better that you can see the movement of the baseball, obviously that's going to translate to having a higher hitting percentage. So that's one way that VR can really enhance, sports vision for an athlete. It can increase efficiency in body movements and improve workload management and recovery. So the more you understand those small patterns of the game and being able to see, the small baseball or a tennis ball at higher speeds, the more it's going to improve your movements. You're going to become more efficient in the way that you perform. And that's going to, help with reduction of injuries. And again, just improve that workload management and make you not just a better athlete, but a smarter athlete as well. And then again, like I said, VR can improve a coaching staff's ability to evaluate players and pre-scout opponents. You heard how in Ribby VR, you can have a guided coach giving you feedback automatically as you're going through that VR program. And that's amazing because that's instantaneous feedback on the way that you perform. And the coach has a much easier process, breaking down those videos and giving you that feedback because it's all happening in real time in this continuous loop. And I really wanted to kind of emphasize this idea that, the athlete's mind is kind of like a supercomputer. And a supercomputer's got to have a really powerful processor. And we can only kind of accomplish as an athlete as much as the memory and the RAM in our brain allows. So, for example, if I'm an athlete and I'm distracted or I feel a little bit of physical fatigue, I'm not going to be able to allocate all of that memory or that RAM that I need to perform at the highest level possible. So really VR and, VR technology is like an upgrade to your processor. It allows you that opportunity to continue to develop and train at a high level without exhausting the physical side of your body or the physical component of your body. And that is going to increase the efficiency overall and just the way that your brain runs as an athlete. So again, it just kind of reinforces the thought that, athletes are amazing creatures. They're capable of doing incredible things. But if too much of that energy is being used on the physical side, and you're getting worn down in practice and you're worried about getting injured and you're dealing with all these other external circumstances, a lot of that can be reduced by using VR technology because it's all within your brain. You simulate the reality, and then you can really focus a lot of that extra internal energy on the performance and the training and all of the other things that VR brings to athletic performance. So yeah, I think VR really is like brain food. And I just wanted to list a couple of the things that as an athlete we think about when we're looking at ways to get 1% better and get that edge on the competition. When you look at, cognitive skill like attention and focus, the main question is how long can I focus and sustain my mental sharpness? And VR is going to help improve that. Visual discipline, another cognitive skill that can also cause physical exhaustion is, how long as an athlete can I keep my eyes on my target and optimize my gaze? So for a baseball player, it's really enhancing that ability to track the baseball in. For a football quarterback, it's actually the external gaze and seeing out beyond, that first line of defense and seeing where your receivers are at. For a hockey player, it might be, locking in your vision on an open space in the net and being able to score that goal. So visual discipline is really enhanced by VR training. Situational awareness, how well can I recognize my surroundings and the game that I'm playing? And then really on the other side, the mental clarity and the emotional component of performance. Again, what we're going to discuss in part 2. So looking at mental clarity, that ability to block out those external distractions like noise and the fans and maybe anything that's going on in an athlete's personal life. or the nerves, that excited nervousness that every athlete experiences no matter what level they're playing at, before a performance or during a performance. How can VR be used to facilitate, calming the mind and controlling the nerves and improving the breathing habits that we have? And then rest and recovery, which is a combination of mental performance and physical performance, is how can VR be used to help calm down after a performance when, that adrenaline is coursing through your body? How can we use VR to help facilitate better sleep patterns and better sleep habits? These are all questions that I think athletes and coaches and sport organizations are asking at every level, and VR has a solution for all of them. So now I'm going to introduce you to a product that is really geared towards that cognitive development of athletes utilizing VR technology. And the name of the organization is called NeuroTrainer.
My name is Jeff Nyquist. I'm the founder of NeuroTrainer. Athletes need the ability to rapidly make better decisions, quicker decisions, be able to see the field, the rink, etc. And we've currently identified that there's 5 major muscle groups of the mind. So our tool can measure and train those major muscle groups. But what the long term holds is the ability to refine that into dozens of different specific abilities in the mind. And what this means is that we can have an index score for every athlete in every sport and show where you're strong, where you're weak, and how to train those particular functions of the mind.
So NeuroTrainer is a virtual reality platform. Essentially, it's these standalone goggles that you pull on over your head and you go to work. But there's 3 major components to it. There's measurement. We want to baseline athletes, say where they are when they came in before training protocol, which leads us to the training protocol. How do we isolate the certain muscles of the brain and train them to improve? If a point guard has low peripheral vision, how do we open that back up so that they can do their job, so that they can execute in the game? And then the last piece is the reporting tool. What do we do with all this data? Well, that's what we do. We actually will crunch this stuff. We will put it in an easily digestible way for coaches, for athletic directors, for players themselves to understand where they stand versus their teammates, versus professional athletes in the general ecosystem of athletics.
Okay, so that's a real basic introduction to the NeuroTrainer platform. And at MindSpark Learning and MSL Capita, we've been really fortunate to be able to kind of test and tinker with their system while they're still kind of in the beta mode. And so that's been a really cool opportunity for Mike and Davis and myself. And we had the opportunity to sit down with Dr. Jeff Nyquist, who you were just introduced to, and Noah Rowland, who's on their development side, and talk to them about the effectiveness of the NeuroTrainer program. And one thing to keep in mind is, it's really cool to see all these different VR simulations and these different programs that you can play right now on the Oculus Quest or the Oculus Go or the HTC Vive. But really what takes athletic development to the next level is the ability to actually track your progress and create customized reports that's going to provide feedback for the athlete and the coaching staff and allow them to be smarter with the way that they train those athletes in the future. And that's something that we really like about the NeuroTrainer platform, is that they also provide the assessment and the data to go along with the actual VR activities and the VR training. So again, we had a chance to sit down with Dr. Jeff and Noah Rowland from NeuroTrainer. So we broke this up into 2 parts just because it got a little lengthy. I think this first part's about 8 minutes. So enjoy the first part of our sit-down interview with Dr. Jeff Nyquist and Noah Rowland from NeuroTrainer.
The product is foundationally coming from the neuroscience perspective and my background training in cognitive neuroscience. And so this is in the realm of what's called cognitive training. We are deployed on a virtual reality headset for athletes. The product is the athlete performance and scouting tool. And so when the athlete puts the headset on, there's a variety of different types of workouts and measurements that are attempting to pinpoint different parts of the brain that are responsible for different athletic skills. And so one person that may be a professional baseball player may use it to develop an ability to lock in more easily and stay focused at the plate and have better plate discipline. Another individual might be a high school girls lacrosse player, and she might be more focused on situational awareness sports vision, maybe a little bit impulse control. And so she would have a different experience in the headset that works on that part of the brain. And then perhaps a scout would be using this as a measurement tool to see how an athlete's strengths and weaknesses compare and contrast against other individuals that they're looking at.
When we talk about that immersive experience that, athletes or human beings have when they're in this VR headset and running through your program, like, what about it exactly is so powerful? Can you kind of speak to the benefits that athletes are finding by training, by using your program?
Yeah, so from the perspective of the science, the tradition of cognitive neuroscience has developed over the last 20, 30 years a very solid foundational ability to measure precise components of different cognitive abilities, and many of those are athletic skills, focus, or the ability to quote unquote see in the back of your head. Those are cognitive abilities more than their traditional physical abilities. But that's really where the science kind of stops, is this ability to train and measure in a dry kind of laboratory way. What VR allows you to do is go to a very special place where you are now engaged in a way that's, again, much more immersive and realistic. And what that ends up being as a user experience is you develop a different type of relationship with your brain. And what I mean by that is, if you have balls flying at you, and some of them you have to decide whether to ignore or to react to, and the type of reaction depends on the type of object, and you realize that, for example, if someone is talking to you and all of a sudden you can't do that task, it opens up the ability to really, for the first time, understand why these are actually important cognitive abilities and why they actually translate to athletic performance. And honestly, without the science and the VR coming together, it's really hard to have that emergent opportunity to have a new relationship with your brain and see why it actually matters.
Working with some of the professional athletes that you guys have, had run through the program recently, what has been some of the feedback that you've received from different athletes in different sports?
Yeah, so I'm sure Noah has a lot to say about that, being the guy who spends more time than anyone talking directly with them. But I guess I would start by saying each sport has its own story. What I was just referring to as different cognitive abilities for athletic performance, that really does start to refine itself based on not only the sport, but the position and the level of play that you're at. So for a high school basketball player, it's really much more, for example, about confidence and not experiencing what we call paralysis by analysis, where you start to get overwhelmed because you're a little bit newer to the sport. Versus if you're a Steph Curry, you don't really have a degradation in your performance based on cognitive load. You are now in an optimization mode where you are trying to just add a few more inches of creating space around you, which is still cognitive in many ways. It's being able to anticipate and see the right information a little bit quicker, but it's a very, very different skill set that you're cognitively trying to develop. And so there's a lot of refinement based on who you are, what you're trying to accomplish at what level.
And the athlete's level of articulation, honestly, because we'll hear everything from, some great sort of just anecdotal pull quotes like paddle, which is one of our two stations in our gym for the mind. Paddle is like a cup of coffee for my brain, which I think is a very lightweight statement in some ways, but in other ways really meaningful. And this comes from an MLB, thank you, Jeff, an MLB catcher who is looking for, how do I get into that state where I process so much information? I have to keep track of so much information like I do in gameplay, and has come back to us. And we've had a couple athletes say, not only does this mimic the intensity of gameplay, but without the physical exhaustion, but in some ways it's even more intense. So we'll often talk about that as getting great quality cognitive reps, where we're not trying to simulate sport, but we're simulating the ability to make fast decisions. We're simulating the ability to be able to make an error and recover from the error and get back on track in a way that you get to replicate over and over again. So we hear that feedback from athletes. We very often hear from athletes that using NeuroTrainer helps them get locked in. This has become a real value prop that's organically been brought to us by our customers, that they start using, they change the logistics and start using NeuroTrainer sometime between an hour and 2 hours before their event, because they feel like it settles down their mind and they're able to get into that high performance state faster. I would say those are the two points of feedback that we hear most commonly, especially right now in this circumstance where they're really not on the field and in the court. So a lot of it is situational compared to what they feel and how they imagine being back in gameplay.
And that comes back to that concept I was referring to earlier about building a different type of relationship with your cognition. So people understand the idea of mindfulness, meditation, training, focus, maybe getting locked in, but it's quite different to put a headset on and be challenged with an environment that you can start to actually feel yourself slowing time down a little bit, and what it actually takes to trigger that ability. And what's special about that is you start to not only understand it's a real thing, you actually start to get your hands around how to trigger that and what the actual components of that are. It's a little bit of keeping your eyes calm. It's a little bit about learning how to keep different thoughts at bay in your mind. It's a variety of things that you, as soon as
learning how to control your breathing.
Yeah, that's a huge one. And so as soon as you start to get those insights, you're starting to get control over how to actually replicate that ability, which is up to now been kind of a black box.
Okay, so a lot of really good pointers and points of discussion that kind of came up in that first part of the interview, really focusing on, again, the cognitive side of mental performance and looking at how to optimize a lot of the responses that happen in the brain that trigger the physical component of reactions and things like that. And again, a really great program. Those guys are extremely insightful when it comes to, VR technology and how it's being used for athletes. And a really cool experience that kind of happened at MindSpark Learning back in January, I believe, is we actually had the opportunity, MSL Capita had the opportunity to introduce the NeuroTrainer program and VR training to an NHL goaltender by the name of Pavel Francouz, who plays for the Colorado Avalanche. And he was naturally curious about the benefits of VR training as an athlete and had never tried it before he came into our facility back in January. And so it was a great opportunity for me. I'm one of the emergency backup goalies for the Colorado Avalanche. So it was a really cool opportunity to kind of use this as a case study to see how VR can actually positively impact an elite athlete like this NHL goaltender. And so he came into the facility. We put him on the Oculus Quest headset. We ran him through kind of the initial piece of the calibration component of the program, and then got his baseline results and really just listened to him and got his feedback and used that as a way to do more research into VR training for athletes. Let's see here. So here's just a quick video of Pavel at MindSpark Learning going through the VR training program. And what was great about it is, from a training perspective, a coaching perspective, the technology does exist where you can screencast what Pavel is seeing in the VR headset to a computer screen so that I can see the same thing that he's seeing, and that will help with the coaching process and the feedback. Boom. So in that video, you could kind of see that there were two different colored balls coming out of the wall. And Pavel had no idea when the ball was actually going to be launched at him. And if the ball was blue, he had to react with his left hand and try and catch it. And if the ball was green, or red, he had to react with his right hand and catch it with his right hand. So it's automatically training that response mechanism in your brain. And it can be sped up or slowed down depending on, the success that you have and how fast you are. So it's measuring your results, and then it's calibrating the program based on the results that you produce. And Pavel's feedback on just that first session that he spent with us was really, really positive. And it was really cool to kind of follow up with him as time went on and the season continued before it was on pause during COVID, because he enjoyed the process so much. He felt like it was so effective just in one session that he went out and bought his own Oculus Quest headset and contacted NeuroTrainer directly, and they started working together. And basically from the middle of January until hockey was put on pause in the middle of March, Pavel was training in VR, using his own VR headset and doing this brain training on his own. And I'm not going to read through the quotes here. You can kind of read through them as I'm discussing, the experience we had with him, but it was all extremely positive. And I think the part that was most interesting to me is this quote on the bottom. NHL goaltenders are really, really highly specialized athletes. And if they see a puck and they can see a shot, most likely they're gonna stop it. Their save percentage is around 98%. So they're stopping 98 out of 100 pucks that they can actually see. But his quote at the bottom was really interesting. I think why VR training can be so effective, because he said, "I don't fear stopping the puck. I fear not seeing it." So the times where he really struggles, and goalies in general struggle, are the pucks that they can't really see cleanly, or maybe there's bodies, floating in front of them and taking away their vision. And that's similar with all sports. If you can't see the basket, it's hard to aim the ball correctly. If you can't see the baseball flying at you, it's hard to hit it properly. So this is something that I think all athletes struggle with, is being able to optimize and enhance their vision. And we know that, the visual system are muscles. The eyes are made out of muscles, and they can be trained, they can be strengthened. And that's where that's one area where VR can have a positive impact, is again, the sports vision, and the really high attention to detail and the pattern recognition that you need to have success. And it was really cool because, a couple of months later, right around when when hockey was put on pause, the NHL kind of found out, NHL.com found out that Pavel had been doing his own VR training, and they interviewed him as well. And he had a lot of really good things to say. And all the way through the NHL pause to this very day, Pavel continues to train with the VR system, and he's finding a benefit to it. And he's been posting really good statistics and having a lot of success. So really cool kind of case study there for just one athlete that has seen the benefits firsthand to VR training. And it's been really cool too. Just over the past couple months, we've seen the evolution of VR training for hockey players and athletes kind of moving forward. And now, just over the past few weeks, a company called Sense Arena, which primarily focuses on hockey players, has released a training program specifically for goalies. And it's the first of its kind. And it actually, in terms of, how much this technology costs, this is something that youth athletes can afford. They pay a monthly fee if they have the headset, and they can gain access to this training protocol specifically for goalies. So one of the reasons we like to share this video, showing hockey goalies using VR, is purely due to accessibility. Hockey is one of those sports that's really limiting. There's a lot of barriers, whether you're talking about the financial barriers due to the cost of the equipment, or you're talking about just the playing surface. It's not easy to access ice. And if you do have access to a rink, it costs money to get out there and actually train every single day. So hockey is one of those sports that can be super enthralling, and it's a great activity for kids physically and mentally. But because there are so many financial and accessibility barriers to the sport, you don't really see a lot of kids, playing hockey or playing the position compared to maybe the other 4 major sports like soccer, basketball, football, and baseball. But VR technology actually breaks down some of those barriers. You can experience what it's like to be a goalie. You can develop some of those hockey and goaltending senses without ever actually having to step on the ice. And when we look at equity and accessibility in sports and, just raising the number of kids that fall in love and have a passion for athletics, VR technology is right on the cutting edge of helping grow sports as a whole and getting kids off their couches and doing physical activities. That's one of the amazing things about VR technology is that, yeah, it's a simulated reality, but you're still physically engaged with your surrounding and your environment. And there's a whole lot of potential benefits with that in mind. We also wanted to touch a little bit on the topic of the coaching aspect of VR technology. And let's face it, VR is not going to be for everyone. There are situations where kids can feel a little bit nauseous or, their equilibrium might be slightly off when they first try, VR. And that can be an uneasy or an uncomfortable situation, and it may turn them off from VR training. But we had the opportunity actually just yesterday to speak with a goalie coach in the NHL for the St. Louis Blues by the name of David Alexander. And he's actually been using VR technology for quite a while with a lot of his athletes, including the goalies for the St. Louis Blues, and they won the Stanley Cup last year. So clearly they had a lot of success. And Coach Alexander brought up some really, really good points about the use of VR technology. And so this was a great conversation that we had while he's currently in the NHL bubble in Edmonton. So we really appreciate the fact that he took some time to talk about his experience using VR with his athletes from the coaching perspective. All right, David, thanks so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. I know things are kind of hectic there in the bubble in Edmonton, but I just wanted to pick your brain for a few minutes about, using VR for some of your athletes, especially while the NHL was on pause, the previous 4 months. Can you just talk a little bit about, using it and maybe how your goalies responded to it and just kind of your overall experience with the VR training program?
Yep. I think, it's something that I had been exposed to as a coach a long time ago. But it's one of those things where when you reach a certain level in sports, you got to be careful when you introduce things like that because it can kind of come across as like hocus pocus, maybe, You got to be a little bit careful. Even though I believe in it, you have to make sure the timing is right. I had never really introduced it because I was in the minors as a coach, and then I got the job in the NHL, and I was more about kind of doing what I knew and doing that well. But I felt like once I got established a little bit more that at some point in time when the timing was right, I would introduce it. And COVID, ironically enough, presented a really good opportunity because we have our athletes away from training, but you're trying to still keep them engaged at the same point in time. And with that being said, you're looking for different ways to do that. And so that's one of the things that came up. In my mind, I thought the timing was right. You know what I mean? So I approached our guys with it. One of our goalies, I wasn't sure if he would be into it or not, but he was like, oh, yeah, let's do this. This looks like it's fun. So I was like, okay, that's good. And then the other goaltender that we have, I really wasn't sure if he would be open to it because I don't think he's played a video game in 10 years. He's a father of 2 and he's in a different space in life. And, but as a coach, I have his trust. So he's like, yeah, let's give it a shot. And, I think for us during the COVID break, it worked out really well because it helped compound their time working on their craft, but in a space where they weren't taxing their bodies, too much because you can sweat with these things, as you know. Right. So that was a nice win for me because it allowed us to work on their game on the mental side, on the neuro side, I guess if you want to say it, but not, you know, make it feel like they're, you know, killing themselves in the gym. And then, you know, when it's in that gamified state, you know, one of our goalies just that, you know, he's like, he loved it. He thought it was a lot of fun. And then, I mean, the other guy who has never really played video games was just like blown away. You know, he had never had a VR headset on, and he was like, what is going on? Like, just, you know, so it ended up being really good. And, you know, ironically enough, I felt like our guys' timing when they came back was really good. Now, we had a couple other things going. We did have some vision training and a whole bunch of other stuff going on, but, you know, so you don't really know for sure, because it's not like the only thing you're working on, and it's not, I guess, a real true test, because we had other things happening. But at the end of the day, you know, it was part of the equation, and yeah, so it's good. It was good. They really enjoyed it, and like I said, the timing was right. And I think now that we've got it in place, it'll be something that we use more often in the future for sure. And it's not just one of those things that we just dropped in and then we're going to put it on the shelf. Like, we're going to keep it rolling. So.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And we talk a lot about that immersive experience, and whether you're a fan of video games, or, you know, you've already been a huge fan and you've used VR before, that immersive experience is going to at least engage your brain in ways that will help retain information or help train the cognitive side of, you know, athletic performance. Exactly. You touched on it briefly about how you're not just going to stick it on the shelf and that's it. You'll never use it again. Like, I consider you one of the most progressive coaches in any sport, for any coach that I've met in my life. So I know your brain is, you know, thinking about ways to utilize this technology, and you're very forward thinking. So like, what are you, if you could name one thing that you're most excited about in terms of VR technology as a whole, and maybe not even from like a goaltender's perspective, but just from the perspective of athletic performance at a high level as a whole, like, what are you most excited about? What's kind of like something that's in your mind that you feel like could be a benefit in the future?
Yep. So, yeah, for sure. You know, it was interesting. One of our goaltenders said on an interview, they said, what's the biggest technology change in goaltending? You know, what is it? And the reporters was expecting, like, you know, the new sticks or the skates, or, you know, like our gear has changed quite a bit over the years. But his answer was video. He said the biggest change he felt was video. And so I'm saying that because, to your point, I have about 100 hamsters that run around on a wheel in my head. And so our plan here is, in my field, we're based a lot on pattern recognition. And so there's only so many ways to score goals in the National Hockey League, and that's well documented. And so we're hoping to, you know, to start using it for pattern recognition. You know, even just using it for just regular video. You know, it's a really neat experience. So, but we are definitely going to be exploring ways, and I know I've talked to you about that. And it is something we're going to launch. I was thinking about launching it now into the lead up into our bubble hockey tournament here, but the timing just wasn't right. You know, it would have been a distraction. So, you know, we're gonna wait, put it on the, you know, put my idea on the shelf until the fall. But we're gonna start building out some stuff for sure with our guys to help increase pattern recognition. And allow them to work on their craft again, but not on the ice, you know, which I think is really important. So, yeah, we're really excited about exploring what's out there. And I think what's going to happen is, you know, like with any ideas, there's spinoffs, you know, so I'm sure we might find ourselves in a spot where we didn't even anticipate. But for now, we will be using it to, you know, work on that pattern recognition. That's for sure.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for spending a few minutes with us from the bubble in Edmonton. Good luck the rest of the way here. It was a really crazy game against the Avs a couple of days ago. It was fun to watch. And yeah, thank you so much, David, for joining us.
Perfect. Thanks, Justin. Take care, guys.
Okay. So again, a lot of great commentary and a lot of great insight from, you know, professional level goalie coach in the NHL who's been leaning on virtual reality, that technology, especially during COVID. And I think it's really important to just kind of emphasize a few things that he said, especially at the beginning, talking about how VR is not necessarily for everyone, and there's a time and place to introduce this new technology. And he was really conscientious of that. And I think he did a great job of introducing it at a time where it had the most value and the most impact for his players. You know, when they're stuck at home and they don't have that connectivity, they don't have access to their traditional training, you know, platforms or their training facilities. That's when it was the right time for him, he felt, to introduce virtual reality to his NHL goaltenders. And so there was a lot of benefit in that because it came in at the right time. It was well received. And if the technology is well received, those athletes are going to get the most out of it, and it's going to have the most impact for the coaching staff as well as the individual athletes. And then the other thing that I really liked is on the end side, talking about how the technology is going to evolve in ways that we're not even sure of. So it's easy to kind of see all these different uses and know that clearly VR is having a positive impact on cognitive development, cognitive training for athletes. But there's probably all kinds of technology advancements and ideas and creative uses that we don't even think about necessarily. And so I really love that he included that part, because that's one of our goals here at MSL Capita, is to spark those ideas and really get you to think outside the box and imagine ways that VR can be used in ways that we haven't seen before, right? And that's always part of that evolution. Like whether you're a coach or you're an athlete or you're involved in a sport organization, you're constantly looking for that tiny little edge, that tiny little thing that's going to make you 1% better than your competition. And VR is still relatively unused in a lot of professional sports and collegiate sports. And so I think you're going to see that drive towards, drive forward, that evolution is going to continue to occur. And just like David said, we're going to see all kinds of awesome uses of this technology in ways that we haven't even thought about before. And so what we're going to do now is real quickly, I know maybe we don't even necessarily have to use Mentimeter, but we can also lean on the chat room because you guys are doing a great job of, posting your thoughts in there. But let's talk about some of these ideas. Let's be creative. Let's think about some ways that athletes and coaches can use VR to improve, cognitive performance. And we're going to talk about this for just a few minutes. If you guys have anything that you'd like to share, I think Mike is going to share the link to this Mentimeter in the chat room. There it is right there. You can also just go to www.menti.com and you can type in this code 556192 and it will pull up this screen that I'm going to share. And let's just take a few minutes to think about, again, some of the ways that athletes and coaches can use VR to improve performance. And if you don't feel like you want to type it on Mentimeter, that's totally fine. We can just continue to use the chat room. I see some really good comments from Tim. Yep, pattern recognition. I think, again, that's one that kind of crosses all sports, the entire spectrum of sports performance, is, again, being able to read those patterns and recognize how games and plays are unfolding. That's just going to make you an more efficient athlete in many, many ways. So I see watching races and steps before actually racing or training. Absolutely. I think the whole concept of pre-scouting or predicting what your opponents might be doing and how, they create their game plan is a big part of what virtual reality could do in the future. I could always imagine, for example, facing a really tough football team. And if you're practicing the week before, the quarterback could actually upload defensive patterns of their opponent and see what kind of defensive systems they set up and what kind of rushing patterns they have before actually playing. And you can simulate it in VR and have a one-up on your competition for that weekend's game. Carol in the chat room says, visualizing your own race before going out there to compete. That's a perfect segue to part 2, where we really look at the mental and emotional side of performance and how VR is facilitating that visualization. Playing on a golf course before you go out, absolutely. I think, again, that self-visualization and that ability to see yourself crushing a ball off the tee box or, nailing that really difficult putt. If you can simulate that in VR and then go out and actually do it, it's just going to help all of those components to that cognitive performance and that mental performance. So that's a really good one. Repeatability, working on a particular skill area or shot pattern, absolutely. So again, we talk about muscle memory being a key component to athletic performance. I think that's absolutely it. It's that ability to get those reps, to be able to repetitively, drop into the pocket and see defensive patterns, or repetitively, go on that racetrack and do some VR driving simulations and get a feel for the track and the turns. Again, that's something that may not be perfectly replicable in VR, but it's close enough to where you still get that sensation and maybe you feel the turns and have a little bit more of an edge moving forward. So yeah, race car drivers, I know that when you look at VR technology and sports performance, the VR tech in racing is very high level, probably higher level than more of the traditional sports like basketball, baseball, and football. VR racing simulators are really awesome. You can have the whole setup where you are almost surrounded by screens 180 degrees, and then your chair is leaned back, and it feels like being in a driver's seat. And there's even some haptic feedback where you feel your body moving a little bit and shaking depending on what kind of race car you're in and what kind of simulation you're doing. So it's really, really awesome, just the ways that VR technology is being used at some of the higher levels. And we know that over time, again, this is going to evolve, and you're going to start to see those uses at the grassroots levels, college, university, junior levels, high schools, grade schools, all the way down to the little kids. So thank you guys for answering that. A lot of good feedback, a lot of good stuff in the chat room. That's exactly what it's all about. We really want to stimulate, your creative side and really spark that imagination and get you guys to think about how a lot of these technologies and VR can improve athletic performance. Let's see here. Okay, we're going to go ahead and skip the breakout room just because I feel like we got really good answers from everyone in the chat room, and that'll save us some time too as we move towards part 2. So we're going to take a quick break. I think it's really important for a 2-hour session to, just have a little bit of a physical break, take a couple minutes to grab a drink, do some exercises, stretch out those legs a little bit, and we'll be right back in about 3 minutes for part 2. All right, so we are back for part 2, and this is the part where we really make that connection between the athletic cognitive side of performance and the athletic mental and emotional side of performance. And again, if we kind of spiral back to those 4 pillars that make up the MSL Capita program, one of the key pillars is the human element. And we really focus a lot on the individual as a human being first, and then an athlete second, because it can be very easy, as you saw in part 1, to kind of look at an athlete as a machine. We always expect optimal performance, peak performance, perfection from these professional athletes that get paid a lot of money to do their job. But sometimes it's really easy to forget that they are human beings first, and we really have to focus on the mental and emotional component of athletic performance if we do expect the physical performance to, operate at a peak level. So that's really what this second part of this presentation is all about. And I think, again, we talk about sports performance. We talk about the athlete's brain as a supercomputer, and there's only so much memory to work with. And athletes have to get really good over time at allocating those mental resources in the right areas in order to achieve that peak performance. But I think we also have to keep in mind that, performing as an athlete, no matter what level you're at or what game you're playing, is an emotional roller coaster. We deal with those anxieties and those nerves, when we step onto the roller coaster and we sit down in that seat before things get going, and we feel that excited energy. We feel the nerves. We feel the thoughts racing through our mind, how things are going to go. It's very common for an athlete to, struggle with worrying about the performance and how they're going to look in front of their peers and their teammates and fans everywhere. And as we start to compete, you know, the brain and the body is coursing with adrenaline, and there's a lot of dopamine flowing through the brain, and there's all these different chemicals that are interacting with all parts of the body, from the central nervous system all the way down to just our actual physical limbs. And we go through this emotional roller coaster where we're performing. Maybe we're playing really well in the first quarter of a football game, and then some things happen and we start to struggle and we're losing the game. And we go through that roller coaster, and when the ride is over and we step off, you know, there's still a considerable amount of emotions, you know, mental, physical, and spiritual as well. And we have to manage those emotions and find a way to kind of calm ourselves down and let that adrenaline kind of flow out of the body and get to a point where we can actually rest and sleep at night, before we wake up tomorrow and do it all over again. And so this kind of cycle of this, you know, metaphor of the roller coaster is something that athletes have to manage every single day. And it can become very taxing. And it can affect, you know, not just performance on the field or on the ice, but how we live our daily lives off the ice as well as human beings, with the relationships that we have, the careers that we have for us. So I think that's really important to understand, is that, you know, as athletes, we are dealing with these emotional roller coasters due to the nature of, you know, performing in front of big crowds and in front of, you know, loved ones and families. And this is totally normal. And this is why, you know, mental performance and VR technology can have such a positive impact on that journey, on that experience. And that's really what we're going to focus on moving forward. So we're going to hear from another expert. If you joined us last week for part 1 of this 2-part series on mental performance, you heard from Dr. Derek Vigon, and a wealth of knowledge from George Mason University, a guy that already has his doctorate and is working on this tremendous program called Psych Beats. And you can learn more about that at psychbeats.com. Obviously, we'll be providing you with some more info on his program with the online toolkit. And in the first part, he answered some pretty basic questions about the importance of, you know, coaches instilling mental health support for their athletes. And in part 2, that discussion continues. And we just wanted to kind of share some of his thoughts. We posted the questions here so you can kind of follow along as we hear again from Dr. Derek Vigon.
Question number 4 is, at the grassroots level, many coaches are unfamiliar or unaware with the importance of mental performance development. What are some of the simple ways coaches can learn more about how to teach the mental game to young athletes? So my answer would be really making sure, first and foremost, that athletes are having fun, that they're wanting to learn more about the game and themselves while they're playing the game. Right? In terms of implementing some of these pre-performance routine or thinking about the mental performance piece, kind of asking your athletes about their routine, or if they don't have one, encouraging them to make one, and figuring out ways that they can get control of their emotions and affective states during performances, right? So there's different statements or techniques or performance routines that can help optimize these mood states and performance outcomes. I think something at the most basic and easy level would be encouraging athletes to use visualization and imagery. You know, one way to get started with this work, particularly during a pandemic, there's a lot of tools on YouTube that you can use. The 5th question is, how is self-efficacy linked to an individual's optimal mental performance? And what can you share about your research that you've done? So Psych Beats, my research, is a unique, tailored, personalized pre-performance audio tool intervention. It covers 5 components that I've researched that I think are linked to optimal performance. The first one is positive self-talk. The second is kinesthetic imagery, essentially what that means. What does it feel like in my body when I'm performing optimally? The third one is the tactical component. The 4th one is recalling past successful performance outcomes. And the 5th one is mindful breathing. So really encouraging the mindful breathing component to get better control of our heart rate. We pair all of those we bring the athletes into the recording studio and have them kind of dictate some of these efficacious statements, and then pair those with emotionally arousing music. So it's a personalized pre-performance intervention that's tailored to that specific athlete, flooding them with all of the correct thoughts right before their performance. It's really unique, particularly because we see a lot of athletes come into the arena with the beats on anyway, so let's have a positive sports psych intervention that's going on at the same time. The sixth question is, we know self-visualization and mental flexibility is important for the overall mental performance of a competitive athlete. How do you see mental performance techniques being introduced on a wider, broader, and more accessible scale? So I think it starts with an education of these are sports psych techniques. These are mental performance tools that can help you, right? And kind of being open-minded to that and doing whatever you're doing potentially at a more optimal level. So I think it starts with the education, and some of that can be found online. And there are a number of resources online that I can point folks to should they have any follow-up questions. And I really, I can see these techniques being applied across the board in life, not just in the performance realm, in the work environment, in the home environment with, a partner or a significant other in the relationship, right, with your kids. And so, I think it's important to really have folks get in touch with their values and what motivates them to do whatever they're doing. And we're trying to promote folks to live a more authentic life. If you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to contact me at psychbeats.com or my website, www.dr for Dr. Derek, D-E-R-E-K, and my last name, Vigon, V as in Victory, I-G-O-N, as in Nancy.com. I look forward to hearing from you, and it was a pleasure and honor to be here today.
Okay, so really good stuff from Dr. Derek Vigon. That I really enjoyed learning from him just a little bit about the way that he sees mental performance for athletes, again, on a broader scale. So not just with the elite performers, but with kids of any age playing any sport. And I really thought that it was great that he highlighted those 5 components to self-efficacy. And I know there was a comment in the chat room earlier that talked about self-visualization. And I think that's where, again, VR can be an amazing tool at all levels for all ages to enhance that self-efficacy and that self-visualization. And the 5 kind of components that he listed off, I just wanted to repeat those so I can emphasize the importance of them, because it does play a role in the rest of the slides that you're going to see in this deck. And the first one being positive self-talk. So we understand that, those positive thoughts and being able to speak to yourself in a positive way is going to enhance the way that you feel and the way that you perform. The kinesthetic sense is the second part. So he talked about that tactile feel and being able to feel within yourself and know what it feels like to perform at a high level, what it feels like to be in the zone and have that flow state engaged. The third one being the tactile feel. And then the recalling is, I think, super important. So being able to go back and remember, moments when you were performing at a high level or when you were your happiest. I think that's really important for, improving the mental health and mental performance of an athlete, because I think we all understand that, and we've all experienced this, that, we play some of our best sports. We have some of our best performances when we're happy. And there's a lot of great research connected to, young kids and their creative state when they're just out playing on their own. They come up with their own games, their own rules. They're not being watched by coaches or by their parents. And when they're just in this free state of play, they perform at a high level. They're extremely creative. They're extremely effective. And they're enjoying themselves so immensely. They do kind of fall in love with the sport or the activity that they're engaged in. And that immersiveness is part of, that ability to have those good feelings and have that flow state. So it's all kind of interwoven and connected together. And being able to remember those moments can really help alleviate stress and worry and anxiety that comes with high-level athletic performance. And then the 5th one is the breathing techniques, which I think any athlete, any sport knows that breathing is becoming one of the most important skills when it comes to having success on the field or in life. And so I think breathing habits and breathing patterns and understanding different ways to breathe when you're performing or when you're trying to, recover from a performance is becoming more and more important every single day. So the second part of our interview with NeuroTrainer really focuses on the mental health and the mental performance side of their program. So this is the second part. I'm going to go ahead and play this and enjoy it. Why should coaches and like sports organizations and athletes use VR and use NeuroTrainer?
The brain is basically a big mirror in the sense that it's activating patterns of neurons in kind of a one-to-one relationship to what the world is, what's occurring in the world outside. And so the more and more that the training scenario and environment and challenge and task demands start to move away from the actual physics and nuanced details of the athletic task, the less and less valid that training becomes for you to be able to transfer that back to what actually matters, which is your performance in the game. And so VR provides us with the ability to keep that one-to-one fidelity very, very crisp. And so we're able to train as specifically as possible the right neural pathways and activation patterns, so that we're not asking an individual to go out into the game and try to figure out how to adjust what they learned on an iPad to be something relevant to what they're seeing in the real sport. That's kind of a cognitive bridge that slows down transfer. It slows down the ability to see real improvements. And so that's really important from our perspective. Now, one could say, well, then perhaps simulating the sport is actually the best way to do it. Get the person in a VR environment where they're in on the ice and watching an actual gameplay going on. And we wholeheartedly agree. Unfortunately, the platforms right now don't have the ability to have that photorealistic, perfect physics of the game with, holding an actual hockey stick and deflecting an actual puck. We believe that that's probably 5 to 10 years away, and we can't wait to build that. But in the meantime, we're abstracting one level away while keeping as much of the real gameplay and the real relevance in our product.
We hear the phrase neuropriming, and we talk a lot about preparation as a key skill for athletic development, no matter what level you're at. How do you get yourself ready for a competition when there are a lot of unknowns about, what the going to be like, or what is your opponent going to do with their game plan? So can you maybe just, and I know we just discussed it, but maybe just speak specifically to that concept of neuropriming and how NeuroTrainer can help that athlete overcome some of the obstacles of preparing for a big game, maybe when they have been off the field or off the ice for a little while?
Yeah, at a high level, we're talking about attention. There's other components, but attention is really the cognitive ability to turn on the right skills, mental skills and physical skills, and have the impulse control and the distraction control to keep the less than optimal choices out of your mind and out of your physicality. And luckily, attention is one of the most tunable, trainable aspects of cognition. And so when we talk about priming or flow state to some degree, in my world, that's called hypofrontality. It's a phenomenon that if you put an individual in the MRI tube, you actually can see the blood flow and the neural activation slowing down in the prefrontal cortex, which is a slower, more deliberate, control-focused aspect of the brain. And instead, the blood flow and activation is moving more parietal and back into the visual cortex and the temporal lobes, where things are a little bit more automated. And so this all comes back to the athlete's world in terms of if you're an athlete, by definition, you've practiced your skills and you hopefully have the ability to unlock a great performance. What's usually in the way is the attentional system, the voice in your head, the lack of confidence, the distractions. And that's all up here trying to second guess or maybe even make the wrong choice. But if you can turn that all off and trust all of that practice, that's where effortless excellence comes from, which is a nice way to refer to flow state.
Yeah, and I would pick up on that. This has been a conversation that has been really resonating with our athletes recently, is this, there's a genuine and a profound interest in mindfulness training and mindset training. And mindfulness training is this deliberate adjustment of your relationship to your thoughts. And as Jeff mentions, all of that though happens in the prefrontal cortex. So if I'm observing my thoughts, I'm still operating from the same part of the brain because it's the thinking brain. And so a lot of mindfulness teachers will refer to mindfulness as flow prep. And so we're seeing this connection between if you do some of this training and you're working with your thoughts and you're working with your sense of confidence, you're working with your critical voice to try to distance yourself from it, by going into this immersive environment that we've created, we can accelerate that ability to access that hypofrontality state. And then when you're in gameplay, you're never always in one or the other. So the athlete's experience is constantly moving back and forth from this prefrontal cortex activity to hopefully this optimal performance quiet mind activity. And what we're seeing and hearing is the ability to put those two together. So part of the priming effect is being able to calm down the prefrontal cortex so you're better able to present what you already know. But also we hear this from trainers, it increases receptivity in terms of training. So I'm going to now add new skills. There's an advantage to going in with that quiet mind to the coach and the trainer as well.
What do you see the future looking like for, VR training and VR performance for high-level athletes? I know you guys probably spend a lot of time doing research every single day into the technology, but maybe just speak a little bit about where the technology is headed, where you guys headed, over the next 6 months to a year. I know you already mentioned, the next program coming out, but just in terms of VR technology as a whole.
I think we can answer that question a number of different ways. So VR right now is the emerging technology. So there's a lot of players in this space. And I think there's a very disparate experience across the board. There's attempts at simulation, some of them successful, some not. We're kind of unique in how we approach cognitive training in VR. And because we build on the Oculus Quest, and the Quest has, Facebook and Oculus have really put a stake in the ground on the Quest, we were very excited to see the Quest upgrade as a system. So some of the areas that we're going to be exploring is trying to anticipate what their roadmap looks like, and then being able to leverage that technology most successfully. So an example would be that they recently released a software update inside the Quest where you no longer need controllers. You can now control your environment with your hands. So that's not something we've built to, but it's certainly something that we're very aware of, and we already can see the applications there. So we're constantly looking at what does the Quest do exceptionally well, and how do we map that against to what we're trying to achieve. And so we look forward to that. Eventually, we'd like to see eye tracking inside a VR product that's readily available to athletes and not exorbitantly expensive. We've already done some of the preliminary thinking and the preliminary work on what we would do with eye tracking when that becomes available, so that we can act as quickly as possible. And I think we're also looking that the technology is moving so quickly, the refresh rates, the quality of the video, the quality of the graphics. So we're constantly predicting and thinking about what in our existing platform can we improve, and also what does this allow us to build. So it's a combination of being very, very pragmatic and very visual. Yeah.
Yeah, so ultimately our goal is to give the most impactful tools to athletes. And so if we're talking about the elite athlete, at the high level, we are excited about a future where we can replicate sport with photorealistic, physics realistic tasks, and start to bring that neuroscience and the actual scrimmages or practices of the sport together finally. That may very well have to wait until augmented reality, which may only be 6 to 12 months away. We're kind of waiting on Apple and Facebook to unveil their next level of product. In the meantime, we are at the more tactical level, continuing to try to have our product answer the most impactful questions that athletes tell us about. And so over the next 6 to 12 months, we're developing some more mini games that are more tactically deployed for different use cases, like a 5-minute priming tool that you can use right before a game. By the way, these can also be a priming tool 5 minutes before taking an ACT. And so, because it turns out that the brain, the areas of the brain used for sports are often the same areas used for academic performance or other life skills. And so there's this balance between tactical development and high-level aspirational visionary ideas, and it's all fed through the filter of constantly talking to our customers and learning what they need next.
And there's a finer art there, which is not learning what they need next in VR, because they don't know what they need next in VR. We spend so much of our time talking to customers to figure out what do they believe they need next in general to develop as an athlete, to improve their skills. And then it's our job to figure out, can we pull that into VR effectively?
Yeah, good point.
Okay. So really good bridge and segue from the cognitive side to, neuropriming and mental performance and mental health as a whole. And I think really the key takeaway, at least for me, and if you'd like to share, some of your takeaways in the chat room, we'd love to hear it, is that concept of being able to control your thoughts. And I think for a lot of athletes that struggle with mental performance and maybe even mental health, it's that cycle of negative thoughts overtaking your ability to just go out and perform and have that clear mind. And what's so interesting about the science and the research around VR for mental performance and the technology is, like you said, the prefrontal cortex, and how VR can help facilitate turning that part of your mind off and just being able to let go of any thoughts in general and just have that clean slate where you go out and you allow your body to do what it naturally does. And that's really at the crux of where VR is becoming so influential in mental health as a whole, whether we're talking about athletics or we're talking about, mental health for students in college or anyone who's struggling with PTSD or anxiety or depression. VR is already being used in the medical field in a lot of different ways, and you'll see some of those videos as we move along here. And so really, I think for an athlete, it's all about bridging the gap between what we can do on our own and how we can use VR to facilitate getting into that flow state, because that's ultimately what every athlete wants. We all want to have a perfectly clear mind with no worries, and all we have to do is just go out and do our thing. But we also understand that that's not reality. We're always dealing with things away from our sport, our personal lives, and just our natural fear of failure. And so when it comes to kind of integrating the VR technology into, coaching and athletic performance, there are a lot of awesome programs already out there that are creating that facilitation and creating that sort of guide, so to speak, that, an athlete or a kid can use on his own or her own, just putting the headset on and going through the program. And there is a program and a company called Mindscape that has a mindfulness training platform specifically designed to help athletes get into the flow state through AI-powered and immersive experiences. And I'm going to play this video really quick. It's a full 15-minute walkthrough of their product. But what's so amazing about what they do, which is really different from a lot of the other VR programs, is they actually have a brain monitoring device that's peripheral that integrates into the Mindscape product. So whether it's a Muse or it's another one of these products that you put on that measures your brain activity, that activity is actually synced up to the VR program. And what you see visually in the VR headset will respond to your brain activity and help give you that instant feedback loop that you need to know that your brain is starting to calm down and getting into that beta wave state. So the video I'm going to play here real quickly just shows you kind of the walkthrough. And as I fast forward a little bit, okay, you can see how the flame starts to change colors depending on the brain activity that's actually going on in that moment.
For as long as is comfortable for you. Once you feel settled in, you can open your eyes. Welcome to Mindscape. Mindscape is the audio-visual arena in which you can train your mind. We're going to start by meditating on fire. We are going to start by meditating on the object of fire.
So I just wanted to, kind of show you how that works. And it goes through this whole guided meditation for 15 minutes. And the calmer your brain is, the flames change from red to yellow to green. And if the brain is experiencing more activity, the monitoring device is reading that, and then the flames will change back from green to yellow to red. So it's pretty remarkable technology in the sense that it's integrating and bringing together, multiple technologies. It's leaning on AI. It's leaning on, the monitoring of brain activity, and it's also providing the guided walkthrough, the meditation and the mindfulness walkthrough, and bringing all those technologies together into one product that any athlete at any age can use. So pretty awesome to see that this is already kind of out there and it exists, and will start to become more commonplace and more relative to athletes everywhere. There's another program that's very similar that is a guided meditation that can be used by anyone, not just athletes, called Deep. So we'll play this video for you. Okay, so very soothing, very relaxing. Even just sitting here listening to that and seeing that for a minute, helps calm my nerves, especially when I'm presenting or doing any kind of athletic task. Again, it kind of circles back to what Dr. Derek Vigon said about the importance of breathing habits and being able to teach that. It's not always easy. And even in my own experience as an athlete, I never learned how to breathe properly when I was on the field or on the ice. And I know a lot of, young athletes deal with the same thing. It's almost like they learn about its importance after it's already way too late. And so again, if we can lean on VR technology to help guide and facilitate the development of proper breathing habits, imagine what that can do for our athletes when it comes time to perform and they don't have that anxiety. They don't feel those nervous, they don't have those issues with nervousness. And athletes, young athletes stay in the game longer, they perform better, they feel more joy, and they have that passion for longer times, and that's going to help eliminate burnout. It's going to help reduce a lot of the issues that we currently see when it comes to young athletes and sports performance. And this goes all the way up, not just for the consumer, but at the university level as well. The University of Colorado at Boulder has a program specifically designed for virtual reality therapy. And it's an integration of using VR with traditional therapy techniques to help reduce mental health issues like anxiety, depression, and other phobias. So it's a little bit of guided meditation, but it's also university level research and strategies to help students at the collegiate level, but also young kids, kind of enhance their performance and, help curtail some of the mental health issues that they may be experiencing.
The program is pretty new at CAPS. It is a virtual reality program, and we're using this technology with students to help them with their fears. A lot of those fears could be related to fear of flying, fear of public speaking, fear of spiders, different scenarios in which evoke a lot of anxiety for individuals. Clinicians have been using this to integrate exposure therapy for a lot of veterans with PTSD. I think it's really exciting that we now have the resources to be able to use it within our counseling center, and so students have access to it as well. I really love doing exposure work with clients and being able to have them move through their fears. And sometimes when you're doing exposure, you don't have access to the things in the real world. And so the VR program really allows you to do that.
So you got a really cool example of how virtual reality therapy is being utilized right now to help, students and athletes overcome some of their fears. And you saw this particular girl had a fear of bees, which I think a lot of us have. And again, exposure therapy is amazing for virtual reality because it's a simulated reality. You're immersed in the experience, but it's not really happening to you. So just a really cool example of how VR therapy can be used to enhance the mental performance and the mental health of an athlete. Moving along, here's another one that we really like to share with you because this one's catered more towards the younger kids. And so that's what's really exciting about this video and this utilization of VR is that it's gamified in a way that really resonates and really impacts younger kids, maybe between the ages of 6 to 12 or 13. So when kids start to develop some of these anxieties and some of these mental health issues at a really young age when their brains are still being formed, again, using VR as kind of a way to interject what's happening with a young athlete or a young kid and provide them with a way to manage and treat some of these issues is extremely valuable. And that's what MindLight provides for the athletic community. right? So really cool how they're utilizing, gamification and giving kids the agency to actually maneuver through these virtual reality environments in these games, and then helping them with, a lot of those different mental illnesses that can arise. Let's see. Okay, same thing. We're going to start to just speed this up a little bit just so I can get through the rest of the slides, but there's a lot of different different examples of VR and different games that are empathy based, that really lean on different activities that allow athletes and teammates to kind of come together and build connections through virtual reality. So for example, this game, which is called Where Thoughts Go, creates that, kind of warm and inviting feeling and sensation. And basically questions pop up on the screen and you push a button and you record your answer using the audio feature on the VR headset. And then those answers are saved and shared in the cloud, and your teammates can listen to your answers on different questions about, who was your favorite athlete growing up, or what was one of the best moments that you experienced, playing your favorite sport. So it's a really cool team building opportunity that comes with, a lot of value, especially right now during the COVID pandemic. Same thing. We're just going to keep this in the chat room just to kind of make sure we stay on time, and would love to just hear your thoughts and maybe get some opinions and some ideas on ways that VR could be used to improve the mental health of an athlete. So let's say you're dealing with an athlete that really struggles with performance anxiety, or is really struggling just over the past couple of weeks with, a lack of performance or a lack of playing time, or a lot of issues, off the field. What are some ways that VR could be used to improve the mental health of an athlete? So that's something to think about, and we'd love to see some of your thoughts on that in the chat room. And we'll wait a couple of minutes just before we get into the last little part here, where we really talk about workforce development, which again goes back to one of our key 4 pillars of the MSL Capita program. So Darren says, just the escape. Yeah, I think that's extremely important. We understand that the demands on an athlete are extremely high. Even at the youth level, we know that the culture of competitive sports is not necessarily trending in the right direction when it comes to, how we treat these young kids that are performing. We always expect the best out of them, and the demands are really, really high. And sometimes kids just want to get away from the sport for a little while so they don't burn out. I think, like Darren said, using these VR programs and some of this technology as just an escape from that reality can really help, balance the athlete's life and get them to start thinking positively again. All right, awesome. Really appreciate the comments in the chat room. And we've got about 15 more minutes, so that's about perfect time for us to get through the third part of this session here. So we really want to look at a lot of the different uses that VR has in today's professional world, whether we're looking at maybe it's the architecture industry, like I mentioned at the top of this session, or it's looking at, different uses in aeronautics, and even in the space industry, VR is really being used. This is a great video from a company based in Helsinki, Finland, that uses VR for a lot of different industries.
Once in a while, a technology comes around which is a game changer, and I think that VR technology has reached that level. As an architect, I was completely shocked at how powerful a tool this is as a step up from everything else that I was experiencing.
That clarity, that resolution, especially in industrial settings where mistakes cannot be made, can save our customers time, money, and in certain cases, save lives.
At Audi, we are developing the car of the future, and to design in virtual reality, we need the high resolution of the Vario device. with high resolution, there's a seamless transfer between the real world and the virtual world.
To be a pilot, you need to have perfect vision. With a Vario device, it's now possible to see the tiniest things inside your cockpit. It's also possible to see the objects far away at the horizon. That's a new standard in training and simulation.
Okay, so there's just an example of some of the uses that VR is having in other industries. And we bring this up because I think it's really important for coaches to understand that the reality is 98% of the athletes that we coach are probably not going to turn into professional athletes. Some will go on to play, collegiate level sports and have that scholarship. But even when they go to college, the focus is always on the student athlete as a whole. It's student first and athlete second. It's all about making sure they get their degree and they develop those skills that they need to have a positive impact in the workforce. And so what's so great about VR, again, is not just what it provides for the athlete, but how it can inspire a human being as a whole. And so it's really important to look at, all the amazing opportunities that are out there right now for kids that we might be coaching as athletes, but may not have all the skill in the world and may not be genetically gifted enough to turn into a professional athlete. If they have these experiences in virtual reality and they use it a little bit for training for their sport, and then realize they have a passion for, the technology behind VR and all the great science that goes into it, you're looking at inspiring someone in a different way, maybe off the court and off the field, but in a professional manner. And so it's really important to realize that while the VR space is very heavy, and like Noah from NeuroTrainer said, it's a really competitive space, it's opening the door for thousands and thousands of jobs across a really wide range of industries, from aeronautics to the medical field to obviously in sports performance. So the VR technology is going to continue to improve, which is going to open more doors for kids that we might be trying to have a positive impact on every single day in the different sport organizations that we're involved in. So we just wanted to share that there are these amazing opportunities that can tie into sports and athletic performance. And one of these companies that we recently discovered is called Circuit Stream. And what's so cool about Circuit Stream is that they offer these online workshops that anyone can sign up for to learn about how to actually develop programs in virtual reality.
Hi, my name is Tyrell Lewin. I'm a student from Vancouver. I'm taking the VR development with Unity course, and now I'm building my own apps for the HTC Vive. But what I'm working on right now is a VR baseball game. Based on the nature of the game, a lot of the focus is always around one player. So I can make you that player. I can let you hit and swing the ball. I can have you pitch. I can have you field and catch, and I can have you base run. So that's all four main elements of the game of baseball.
My name is Jason. I'm one of the instructors for the VR development course. The course right now is structured into 10 separate classes where we'll have small cohorts of people and we'll discuss normal Unity development. Depending on which cohort you're in, there's two different streams, one stream for basic and one stream for advanced.
Beginners get a great introductory to Unity, a great platform for developing, and get to jump right in right away and start making something that they can show on their phone to their friends and their family. For more advanced people, or people who are more familiar with Unity, they get a really good introduction into the VR frameworks and the best practices and how those work. A lot of things that you don't get from just looking around online or forums on your own. Having a teacher there like Jason, who's experienced and gone through it many times before and seen a lot of errors, it really helps in kind of guiding you along the right path and showing you a good base and framework to start with to build pretty much any VR app. For anybody who's maybe on the fence about jumping into Unity or coding or VR or the course in general, I'd say it's be one of the best decisions you ever make.
The most rewarding part about teaching the online course is because it's small cohorts, I get to see every student develop. I get to see them from the moment they start the course, where they step into, and they sometimes have no idea what's going on in Unity or C#. And I get to see them change into this more confident programmer where they're applying what they've done. And seeing that grow from that moment where they just have no idea what to expect to that confidence of I've built something is a fantastic experience.
Okay, so same thing. Really cool videos showing, again, that workforce development piece and just being able to inspire kids that we're coaching and developing on a daily basis that may not go on to have professional athletic careers, but maybe they find a passion in VR technology and they get involved in coding the next great VR game for athletes. So the other videos that I were going to show were kind of reinforcing that same concept of, you know, workforce development for kids that we're working with and coaching on a daily basis. And so now we're at the point where it's time to just recap and spiral back on everything that we discussed over the past few hours. And clearly you got a chance to see a lot of the great benefits that VR can bring to, you know, athletic performance, whether we're talking about, you know, cognitive performance in terms of reaction speed and sports vision, or we are talking about the mental performance and the mental health of an athlete with, you know, VR training in different ways that are being used at the university level, as well as facilitating and guiding meditation and mindfulness practices and breathing exercises as well. And really the four main benefits that VR brings is the idea of retention, which is just the muscle memory and the repetition and the ability to kind of simulate training before you actually go out and play. It's the immersiveness of the experience. And of course, the mindfulness part, which is extremely important to self-efficacy and letting go of negative thoughts and staying in a positive mindset. And then the feedback loop, which is, you know, constantly being in that state of learning, which is really important. And when you kind of mask it with VR and with gamification, you know, learning happens everywhere and it can happen at any moment in time. And kids don't necessarily realize that they're developing these great habits, whether it's breathing or positive self-talk. They're just enjoying the experience, and that's what makes VR so powerful. So that's kind of a quick recap of, you know, the things that we discussed during this session. And let's not forget that VR has proven results, whether you're looking at an industry like, you know, developing automobiles, or you're looking at the astronaut industry or archaeology or aeronautics, whatever industry it is, you're seeing key statistics like 30% assembly time improvement and 85% reduction in overall training time. So clearly there's a lot of efficacy involved in what VR can provide for a human being or an athlete. And that's it. We would love it if you took a couple of minutes to take our short survey. We appreciate any feedback you might have on this session, anything that we can do to make it better. We'd love to hear it. And this will also allow you to get your certificate for taking this course. Since it was over an hour long, you can get a certificate showing that you took our survey, our course on mental performance and VR technology. So the link is in the chat room. We would really appreciate your feedback. It helps us, you know, continue to improve the MSL Capita program. And then lastly, you know, Mike and I are here to answer any questions you might have on the VR technology as a whole. If you're looking to, you know, purchase a headset or try it out for the first time, we want to make it absolutely clear that, yes, there are very expensive headsets that are out there, but there's also a lot of different ways that you can still utilize the VR technology in an affordable way that can be used in grassroots programs. So we'll stick around for a few minutes just in case you guys do have any questions. Either you can ask it in the chat room or you can just unmute yourself and ask those questions. And then last little reminder is the fact that we do have a few more sessions lined up. We have one on August 20th where we're going to talk about team building during this pandemic. And then we'll look at the growth of high school esports on August 25th. And then we have our first event in September on the 2nd, where we connect sport organizations and industry partners. So thank you guys so much for joining us. Really fun session. Really appreciate all the great feedback that we got in the chat room, all the great thoughts and comments that were made. And we will see you next time.